this video, we're looking at how to break down story beats in the first 35 minutes of the HBO series The Last of Us, Episode 1, specifically on Sarah's character arc. When looking at a script or analyzing a finished film or show, I think creating a list of the story beats is helpful to build a skeleton to then figure out the specific shots for each scene. It reveals emotional turns for characters, clarifies the story information that needs to be shown, as well as subtext for the scene. So it's a useful skill for filmmakers and story artists. As a usual disclaimer, there will be spoilers for this first episode, so I recommend watching The Last of Us Episode 1 before proceeding further. Also, this video discusses general big story beats, as it's possible to go more specific and identify more beats within the scene. For the beats, I try to write short, declarative sentences to convey the basic story information. The first episode starts with a cold open set in 1968, where the threat of a fungal pandemic is established within a discussion between a news anchor and two scientists on the set of a talk show. This scene sets the context for the fungal threat we see years later, when the story starts with Joel and his daughter Sarah. So even with this first beat, a filmmaker or story artist can then decide what are the sequence of shots to fully flesh out this big story beat. For example, the first three shots for this sequence are a wide shot of the scientists and news anchor on stage from the POV of the audience. The camera cuts to a reaction shot of the audience with a cameraman in the foreground. Then we cut to another wider shot, but closer to stage, establishing the two scientists talking to the news anchor. We could plan the rest of the shots from these first three shots based on information we need to visualize from the story beat. In beat 2, after the cold open, the story jumps to 2003. Sarah wakes up her father Joel. We're introducing Sarah here, and the first 35 minutes of the episode is told from her POV. The filmmaking and sequencing of the shots often are informed by her presence, so we are learning things as she is discovering them. By starting with Sarah after the cold open, this choice makes her later death more shocking as we've grown to empathize with her during this first part of the episode. In beat 3, Joel and Sarah eat breakfast, and we see their home life and dynamic. We also introduce Joel's brother Tommy and his personality. This beat also establishes Joel's birthday is today, and we're setting up context for the world. Information travels slower via radio and TV news in 2003 compared to present day. In beat 4, Sarah goes into Joel's bedroom and grabs his broken watch and some extra cash. She finds his knife, which offers a hint of danger about Joel's persona. In beat 5, Sarah heads outside to Joel's truck. They meet their neighbors, Mr. Adler and his elderly mother. Joel tells Mr. Adler that Sarah will visit the Adlers after school. We end with Joel, Sarah, and Tommy driving off into the street, and we learn the exact date is September 26th, and they're in Austin, Texas. In beat 6, Sarah listens to her teacher going through a lesson at school. Sarah notices a nearby classmate flicking her hand unconsciously. This could be a hint of a possible fungal infection, but it's not confirmed in the scene. It does increase the tone of apprehension and fear building up so far in the story. In beat 7, Sarah takes the bus, traveling through Austin to get to the watch repair shop. She drops off the watch to get it fixed. Police sirens and cars pass through the street. In beat 8, the shop owner's wife hurriedly comes in and tells him that the shop is closed and that Sarah should go home. This is where we start to get the impression that something is wrong based on the wife's reaction. When we look at Sarah's performance, she's noticing something's up, but she's not panicking yet. In beat 9, Sarah goes to visit the Adlers. She asks Miss Adler if everything is okay on the news. Mrs. Adler brushes it off and makes cookies while Sarah does her homework. So now we see Sarah taking some active steps to investigate what's happening in the outside world, even though she is still relatively calm. In beat 10, Sarah wanders around the Adler's living room and passes by the catatonic elderly mother. Sarah doesn't notice the elderly mother starting to convulse in the background. The horror and tension are intensified by placing things in the frame, but they go unnoticed by Sarah. This is the first visible manifestation of the fungal infection. Since Sarah doesn't see the convulsions, the choices here underscore the silent, subversive nature of the infection, and that danger is slowly closing in. On her way out, Sarah notices the Adler's dog, cautiously staring at the now still elderly mother. In beat 11, outside the house, Sarah sees a trio of military jets zip through the sky. This is a visual escalation of what we saw earlier in beat 7, with the cop cars passing by the watch repair shop. This only increases a sense of foreboding. In beat 12, later that night, Sarah reads a magazine at home, not paying attention to the news broadcasting about a series of violent incidents in downtown. Once again, these environmental cues are building up tension around impending danger. In beat 13, Joel returns home but forgot to pick up a birthday cake. Sarah gives him the fixed watch as a present. We see father and daughter bond as Joel jokes at first if the watch is fixed. We also see that Sarah looks after and takes care of her dad when he is absent-minded. She also hands him a DVD for one of Joel's favorite movies that she borrowed from the Adlers. Later in beat 14, while watching the movie, Joel gets a call from his brother Tommy, who needs to get bailed from jail. Tommy reveals he intervened in a bar fight, and it's likely that the fungus was involved. In beat 15, Joel tucks Sarah in bed and heads out to get Tommy. In beat 16, Sarah wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of explosions and sirens. In beat 17, she looks for Joel, but she's alone in the house. She turns on the TV to see an emergency alert on, and the alert tells everyone to stay indoors. Suddenly, the Adler's dog, Mercy, slams against the window, frightening Sarah. The filmmaking and tone shifts into classic horror storytelling, with the danger of being alone in a house and the possibility of anything popping up from every corner. Sarah then goes outside to an empty neighborhood street and sees a helicopter fly by. She tries to take Mercy back to the Adlers, but Mercy runs off. Sarah hears a breaking noise inside the Adler's house and investigates. In beat 18, Sarah goes into the Adler's house to see what made the sound. She continues to hear loud explosions outside in the distance. The camera often pushes in tighter on Sarah, closing our peripheral view of what's around her, and only moving to reveal things as she discovers them. Sarah finds blood on the ground and sees the elderly mother killing Mr. and Mrs. Adler in the kitchen. The mobile elderly mother chases Sarah out of the house. In beat 19, Joel and Tommy appear in their truck, and Joel kills the elderly mother with a wrench. Sarah is terrified, and Joel consoles her. They head into the truck to escape. They ride past the attacking Mr. and Mrs. Adler, who attack another neighbor, Denise. In beat 20, inside the truck, Sarah worries and questions if Joel and Tommy are sick. Tommy reveals he heard a news anchor talking about a virus, mostly affecting people in the city, and that the highway is blocked off. They ride past a burning home belonging to one of their friends. Since the camera is placed inside the truck, we as the audience are right there with these three characters, experiencing the unveiling horror firsthand. Sarah pieces it together that the Adlers took their elderly mother into the city, and then remembers that Joel also goes into the city for work. Tommy comforts her. Joel commands Tommy to keep driving past a lone family on the road, asking for help. In beat 20, there are several events, so technically we could break this into further beats, but for the sake of time, we'll consider this a big beat 20. They run into stop traffic on the highway, so they change tactics and head across a nearby field. They run into a military blockade. Sometimes we see the camera placed behind Tommy and Joel, so we're seeing them from Sarah's POV. In beat 21, they head down another route. Sarah worries if the fungal infection is everywhere as a plane passes overhead. They run into blockades in town along with fleeing crowds, but as they back away, a plane flies and crashes along their route, knocking them out. In beat 22, moments later, Joel awakens Sarah inside the crashed truck. The camera stays on Sarah's face in a tight close-up as she regains her senses. She's injured as Joel pulls her out of the debris. Tommy gets separated from Joel and Sarah when a crashed police car blocks their path. Joel carries Sarah off. In beat 23, Joel and Sarah stumble upon the infected people who chase them through nearby buildings. One infected person chases after them, but is shot outside by a lone soldier. In beat 24, the lone soldier commands Joel and Sarah to freeze. As Joel and Sarah plan to regroup with Tommy, the soldier gets an order over his comms to shoot them. Joel and Sarah back away as the soldier fires on them. The soldier advances on Joel, but Tommy shoots him from off-screen. In beat 25, Joel and Tommy discover that Sarah has been shot and is dying. Joel holds her in his arms as she dies. So after charting out these 25 big story beats, the step for a filmmaker or story artist would be to figure out the shot sequence for each big beat. This outlining process makes it easier to track all of the information, creating a manageable process to corral story information and to get it transferred to actual shots in camera or drawn storyboards. I think it's also a helpful tool if rewriting scenes was required, because you can look at your beat sheet and figure out what needs to be adjusted and how to keep a meaningful through line for all the character objectives, character arcs, and subtext that you want to achieve. In the end, it makes the writing and filmmaking more practical, and it can be a key part of your process.